Alright, all you moviegoers out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And yes, I do realize the intro is a little bit longer than most, but come on. I had to record it to let you fans know how I was able to break the level cap and beat a pinball wizard who was the king of all the games that he played in his time, with the exception of blackjack. That's my wheelhouse. That's my wheelhouse. And it was able to save this very show. I'm proud of myself. But besides that, folks, I think it's time for the 100th time for us to go to the movie reels once again for a very special edition of the 3MR. And the movie we have up on the plate for this week, folks, was a tough decision that we had to make at the last minute, because we were going to try to feature both of them, but at the same time said one should be saved for a special occasion, and the one we decided to save that featured Rodney Dangerfield, which was none other than Caddyshack, will be featured on this show in September. So instead, for this week, folks, for the 100th level of the Indie Radio Arcade, I present to you a Chris Farley classic, none other than Tommy Boy. And the meat and potatoes of this said movie, folks, is after Big Tom Callahan would unfortunately pass away, Callahan Jr. would inherit this said Callahan Auto Parts store and would have to try to get the jobs back for all the factory workers, and would decide to go to none other than Zelensky, that I keep saying his name wrong for the longest amount of time, to make a road trip to his auto parts store to convince him to try to buy a whole bunch of brake pads to save the factory, and along the way would try to make some sales to improve the legacy of the Callahan family. And that's the best meat and potatoes we have for this, folks. And what did I love about this said movie? Well, the on-screen chemistry between Chris Farley and David Spade is absolutely hilarious. But the one thing that I loved more than that was definitely Chris Farley. That man is a comedic genius and a legend. And this wouldn't be the first time, or the last time I should say, those two would share the silver screen with each other, because they would also be featured in such movies such as not only The Black Sheep, but also in another one of my favorite movies that I forgot the name of and should have reviewed this week, but I once again didn't remember the name of the movie, none other than Almost Heroes. Man, and like I said before, Chris Farley, absolutely legendary in this said film. And also you have featured in this film Brian Dennehy, who was actually the sheriff in Rambo First Blood. Yeah, didn't know that. And also besides them, you have Dan Akroyd, who was featured in this said film, who was a part of the Ghostbusters, and amongst other legendary movies such as Coneheads, and even David Spade, who was featured in this film, who was a part of such films such as, I guess, Joe Dirt. I mean, he had other films, but that's one that's most notable in his career, besides 8 Heads and a Duffel Bag. Oh, and Grandma's Boy. Almost forgot that one too. And amongst them, you also had Bo Derek, who was featured in this film, who was in the original Tarzan the Ape-Man movie. So besides having a legendary cast in this film, another thing that I loved in this film had to have also been the music that was featured in this film. And once again, even though I keep going over it over and over again, the absolute silliness of one Chris Farley in this film. And if you want a prime example of it, and we might as well give you a little bit of a spoiler of one of the things that does happen in this film, I do believe the scene where Chris Farley decided in his infinite wisdom to get out of a ticket that was speeding, to actually get out of the car and go on the side of the road, and I'm going to do my best impersonation of this and step away from the mic for a little bit. Bees! There is bees everywhere! There's bees! Which was absolutely hilarious to see, and I think I was crying and laughing at the same time for a good 5 minutes after that one scene. And seeing the fact that we don't know how to review movies along the lines of Siskel and Ebert or any of those other famous movie reviewers out there, we say this. If you want to watch a kid of a son of a legendary auto parts store trying to save his father's legacy and keep the job of several people in Ohio by going off to the conehead himself to try to get him to buy auto parts while also trying to live up to his father's legacy along the way, with a lot of comedy in between, then I recommend you go out there and watch that flick. And trust me, it's a laugh riot from start to finish. And I guess with that said, folks, we might as well head back into music, and when we return, we'll be back with more of the Indy Radio Arcade right after a word from our sponsors. So don't run out of quarters just yet, folks, and stay tuned.